guys. In this video, I'm going to explain how the circle of fifths works in a simplified way involving only major keys so that you could start to learn your key signatures and start to learn how the keys and scales interact with one another, and so that you can also start to develop a basic understanding of how Western music works. And I'm going to attempt to do this without overwhelming you, which is why I'm going to leave minor keys as well as other more advanced parts of the circle of fifths. I'll save that for another video. So this video, I'm going to draw the circle of fifths for you and create it, and I will hope that you will be able to do the same after watching this video, because that's a great way to practice exercising your knowledge of the circle of fifths, is to recreate it often. And if you know any key-based technical exercises like scales or pentascales, I'd recommend practicing them in circle of fifths order until you have your circle memorized in both directions, because that will help you develop that practical understanding that you really need as a musician. So with that said, I'll go ahead and get into my explanation. So what is the circle of fifths? The circle of fifths is basically a circle. It's a diagram that's in the shape of a circle. And it has 12 spots on it, or 12 units, or divisions. And so the circle is often compared to a clock face. And each spot on the circle represents a fifth. And a fifth is defined as 7 half steps in our Western music system. So a half step is the smallest unit of distance that we have in our scale system. So an example of a half step, I'll switch my camera. Example of a half step would be from C to D flat. I just moved a half step to the right. That's the smallest distance I can go. Notice I went up to a black key. And then from C down a half step, that would be up to the left. That puts me on B. Notice that that's a white key. So just because you go up a half step doesn't mean you automatically always go to a black key from a white key or whatever. It just means to move up a half step or move down a half step, move up one note, move down one note, right? And it's worth mentioning that that's basically what you're doing when you add a sharp to a note or a flat to a note. A sharp basically means to raise a note by half step, and the flat means to lower the note by half step. So that's basically how that works. So a fifth is defined as 7 half steps. So if we start on C and we count up 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, there's our fifth. That's what a fifth looks like. And you might say, oh, well, just C to G is a fifth. You know, C, D, E, F, G, that's easy. Like, why do I have to count half steps? The reason why you have to count half steps is because there are parts in the piano where you're going to switch from a white key to a black key on the outer part of the hand, like here. That's a fifth, and so is that, right? You're probably not going to know that unless you count half steps. So get comfortable with identifying a fifth as 7 half steps, and you won't have any issues with miscalculating your fifths, okay? The next thing we need to know is what a whole step is, because we're going to use a combination of half steps and whole steps to construct the major scale. So a whole step is just 2 half steps. So a major scale is basically constructed of a series of whole steps and half steps. And it's mostly whole steps, but it's got a half step in specific places. It's got a half step between the 3rd and 4th note of the scale, and it's got a half step between the 7th and 8th note of the scale, okay? So if I play a C scale, it'll look like this. And so what we're going to do is we're going to count half steps real quick. And so from the first note to the second note here, you'll notice we skipped a black key, so that's 2 half steps, 1, 2. And then from here to here, that's 2 half steps, or a whole step. So 1, 2. From E to F, that's just 1. From F to G, that's 2. G to A, that's 2. A to B, that's 2. And then B to C is 1. So the order is basically 2, 2, 1, 2, 2, 2, 1. That's the formula to make a major scale. And so if we go up a half step and we start on D flat, and we use that same formula, we'll go up a whole step, up a whole step, up a half step, up a whole step, up a whole step, up a whole step, up a half step, right? That's how we create the scale. Look how many black keys we need in order to make that scale sound like this one. You recognize that they're in different places on the piano, but that one looks totally different, and it's got a different fingering. It feels totally different to play. You'll learn about this when you deal with the circle of fifths, okay? So that's basically how the major scale works. And we talked about the construction of the major scale, so I'm going to just show you what that little formula looks like. I have my little drawing here. I'm going to zoom in and show you between scale degrees 1 and 2. by the way, scale degree is just referring to the note of a scale. So for example, in C, scale degree 1 in C is C. Scale degree 2 in C is D. Scale degree 5 is G when we're talking about being in C. So being in C major, that means using the C scale. So G is the 5th scale degree of the C scale, if that makes any sense, okay? So first scale degree to second scale degree, that's going to be 2 half steps. So we're going to write that right here. Second to third, 2. Third to fourth is 1. Fourth to fifth is 2. Fifth to sixth is 2. Oops, there we go. Sixth to seventh is 2. And then 7th to 1 or 7 to 8 is basically the same thing. That'll be 1. So your major scale is essentially 2, 2, 1, 2, 2, 2, 1. You want to remember that, and you can recreate the major scale anywhere. Now, that doesn't handle the fingering, but that handles the construction of the scale, and that's basically how it works. Okay? So you'll need to know that in order to understand this next part. So what we're going to do is, I already showed you how to construct a scale in D flat, but the next spot on the circle is going to be G, and I'm going to explain how that works in just a second. So let me actually go to the circle real quick, and I am going to change my color here, and hopefully that is the right thing. And what we're going to do is we're going to make 12 spaces. So we're going to divide the circle up into 12, oops. Sometimes my iPad bugs out. There we go. We're going to divide it into 12 parts. So that'll look like this. Okay? And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to draw a 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay? And we're going to divide the circle in half. This is all our prep work to start understanding the circle. We're going to divide it in half, and we're going to call this the sharp side of the circle, and we'll call this the flat side of the circle. Okay? So basically what these numbers represent, they represent 2 things. They represent how many fifths away from C this particular key or scale is. Notice I'm using key and scale synonymously. And they also represent how many sharps or flats the scale is going to have. So if we have 2 sharps, that's 2 fifths to the right from C. I'll show you what that looks like in just a second. Same thing over here. If we have 2 flats, that's going to be 2 fifths to the left of C. Okay? So now that we have that information, oh, let me change my color back to red because I want things to stand out. All right, and we're going to put C major here up at the top. This is our home, C major. Since I'm only dealing with major keys, I'm not going to write the word major down, okay? So your C major scale looks like this. Remember our order of whole steps and half steps, right? So I told you that when we move 1/5 to the right, that's going to be at that 1 o'clock position on the circle, if you're thinking of it like a clock face, okay? And if we do our 2, 2, 1, 2, 2, 2, 1 here, I'll show you what that looks like. 2, 1, 2, 2, 2, 1. Watch what happens if I don't include that F sharp. Notice that that does not sound like the regular major scale. And so if I used that in a piece, it would make the piece sound really weird. It would make many of the chords in that piece sound weird. So we need the F sharp in order to preserve the ratio of the major scale and keep it sounding like a major scale. So we get the F sharp, and therefore this is going to be the key of G major, and G major has an F sharp as a permanent feature of the scale. Okay, so we're going to write G over here. It has 1 sharp. I'll go ahead and write sharps over here so that you don't get too confused, right? There you go. G has 1 sharp, and it is 1/5 to the right of C. So no sharps, 1 sharp. Right? So what do you think is going to happen if we move another fifth to the right? We go to D, and we have to, if you do the 2, 2, 1, 2, 2, 2, 1 thing, you're going to realize that the F sharp's going to have to stay. And then we're going to get a new sharp, which will be C sharp. Right? So the next key is going to be D major. D major is 2 fifths to the right of C, and it has 2 sharps. It includes G major sharp, which is F sharp, and it has a new sharp, which is C sharp. So I'm going to take a quick detour to another page here, and I'm going to show you about this concept called key signatures, okay? And I'll switch, well, I'll keep the piano camera on in case we need it. So I'm going to draw a bad treble clef. Sorry about that. A lot of other people can draw much better treble clefs than I can, right? Anyway, here's our treble clef. And what I'm going to do for you is I'm going to draw what this is going to look like when we are in the key of G. And I'm not going to talk about minors right now. I know there's a minor option, a way to express this key signature as a minor scale, right? But we're not going to talk about that today. We're just going to talk about the major. And just so you know, there is one major key per key signature, and there are 12 major key signatures. There are 12 keys, basically, that are major, okay? So this is one of them. Actually, before I even get to that, what I'm showing you right now already is a key signature. Notice that there's no sharps or flats, right? That's the key signature for C major. If we're going to play in a major key, right? If you're a beginning pianist, most of your music's probably looked exactly like this. You might have your treble clef and your time signature or whatever, and then you get your key signature. But that's, you know, the lack of sharps or flats, whatever, that's still a key signature. And remember, a key signature is a series of sharps or flats or none that are permanent features of the scale, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to draw an F sharp in here, like that. So when you see this, we are now in the key of G major if we're playing in a major key, okay? So that means if I do something like this and I draw you a little scale, right? Here's your D, E, F, G. So this sharp is applying to this note right here. That F sharp is applying to that F. That F is by default sharp. And so in order for it to not be sharp, we'd have to actually write in something called a natural, which would look like this. I'll draw, oops, that's a bad note. I'll draw one over here. A natural is going to look like that. Okay, and it's going to cancel out the sharp, because that's how you would actually have an F natural. That's how you'd have a regular F in the key of G, okay? So by default, Fs are sharp in the key of G. And by the way, if we have an F down here, right there, that's still an F sharp too. This sharp that I just drew an arrow from, that's not the only sharp that there is. It applies to all of the Fs in the key. Okay, and they just write it up there because there's a standard for the way that you write a key signature. Okay, so here's another thing that I want you to kind of realize. I'm going to go back to my circle for just a second. Oops, there you go. And what we're going to do, I'm going to just write a little thing to kind of keep in mind here. Okay, we're going to write new sharp on 7th scale degree. Okay. So basically, you'll notice that if you compare F sharp, like where is F sharp relative to G? It's the 7th note. It's the last unique note before that tonic note gets repeated again. Okay? So that sharp is appearing on the 7th scale degrees. Well, when we go to D major, well, first of all, here's G. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's on the 7th scale degree. Right? When we go to D, we're going to keep the sharp that we already had. And on the 7th scale degree, we're going to get a new one. So basically, on the sharp side of the circle, which is the right half of it, all of your sharps are going to appear on the 7th scale degree. All your new sharps are going to appear on the 7th scale degree, and you're going to keep all the old sharps, which means that whenever you have a sharp in your key signature, it will always be F sharp, okay? You're never going to see something that looks like this as a key signature. You're never going to see that. As far as dealing with regular major scales, because like this is not a thing that doesn't really exist. The first sharp to appear is F sharp, which leads me into the next thing that I want to mention to you, that the sharps appear in a certain order that you want to memorize. And if you'd like, you can come up with a sentence to memorize that. You know, I don't feel the need because it's just 7 letters, so you can just like memorize 3 of them and then 4 of them, or divide it up however you want. But you got to memorize that. This is the order of sharps. So a key signature is actually going to look like this. The first sharp that appears is always going to be an F sharp. The second one that appears is going to be a C sharp. Third one is G sharp. The fourth one is D sharp. Fifth one is A sharp. Sixth is E sharp. And the 7th one is going to be B sharp, right? They're always going to appear in this order. So basically what you do is when you look at the circle of fifths, you look at the number of fifths away from C that is, or the number of sharps that has, because that actually means the same thing, right? And let's say it has 4 sharps, well then your key signature is just going to include the first 4 sharps. That's how it works. So if you memorize this, you don't actually have to memorize what the individual key signature looks like for each particular key, because it just works the same. We just add them, they look like this, they appear in this order, and it's actually really self-explanatory. And actually, when you're dealing with the left side of the circle, the order of flats, it's going to be the same thing as this, just in reverse. And we'll get to that in just a second. So I just wanted to let you know that, okay? And one other thing I wanted to mention, you'll notice that I wrote in a B sharp here. That's the 7th sharp. We don't really encounter the 7th sharp that often. It's there for theoretical purposes, but there's an easier way to express the key of 7 sharps than actually has 7 sharps. The other way to express it is 5 flats, and that's an easier way to deal with that key, and I'll show you what that is in just a second. But I just wanted to mention that, yes, we do have 7 sharps theoretically, but you're not going to use them most of the time, so that's just kind of something to be aware of here, okay? So with that said, I'm going to back that up real quick and go back to this side of the circle, and we're going to fill out the rest of our circle, okay? So from D, 7 half steps to the right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, we're going to get A. That's 3 sharps. We'll go ahead and write that down. A. Okay, A major. From A, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, E. From E, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, B. And from B, this is why you got to count your half steps, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, F sharp. So that means 6 sharps is F sharp major. Okay? And so when you actually work that out and you remember your order of sharps, right? F, C, G, D, A, E, B. Well, we're going to use the first 6. We're going to use all but the B if we're playing an F sharp major. So that means we're going to have an F sharp, a G sharp, an A sharp, a B sharp, or sorry, not a B sharp, my apologies. F sharp, C sharp, F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, B, C sharp, D sharp, E sharp, F sharp. There you go. Yes, you have a white key sharp there. That's why we talked about the half steps and everything earlier. Don't worry about whether or not the key is black or white. Just worry about the direction and half steps and things like that, right? So that means that we practice the F sharp major scale. We associate the F sharp major key signature of 6 sharps with F sharp major scale and key, right? And when we play a piece in this key, we're hopefully not like deer in headlights with how hard it is. If we know how the key feels, we know how to read that. We know all of those sharps are permanently enabled, and if we play those scales, we play those arpeggios, we play those chords, we'll have a good sense of what the key feels like to play, and then that repertoire will no longer be inaccessible to us. So that's one of the reasons why we're going to actually practice this, okay? So that's the sharp side of the circle, and I'm going to look at my notes here and make sure I didn't miss anything. I don't think I did. Okay, so let's start working on the flat side of the circle, okay? So from C, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We're going to go a fifth to the left to fill out the other side of the circle, and I'm coming in from the top because I feel like it's easier to explain. So F major is our first flat key, okay? And so notice, if I do our 2, 2, 1, 2, 2, 2, 1, you're going to get a B flat. Now you might be wondering, why is it a B flat and not an A sharp or whatever? And the answer to that is that we need one scale degree of each letter name. Okay, so if we have an F, we have an A, or sorry, a G, an A. We can't have an A sharp because we already have an A, okay? So we'll have to have a B flat because that's the version of B that we're gonna get in this scale. Anyway, that's how the F major scale works. I'm gonna go ahead and draw in some flats over here. Flats, 2 flats, 3 flats, 4 flats, 5 flats, 6 flats, okay? F major is your first one. What note of F major, what scale degree of F major does the B flat, is B flat? You know, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's the 4th note. And this is going to be true of all the flat keys. The new flat, that's a terrible new, but sorry, appears on 4th degree, 4th scale degree. Okay? Let me see if I can write that more clearly in case you take a screenshot or something. New flat on 4th degree, okay? So B flat is the 4th scale degree of F, and that's how that works. So if we go another fifth to the left, F, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, we get to B flat, which is the previous flat that we had from the previous key, okay? And then if we go up, we're going to notice that the new flat's going to appear on the 4th scale degree, and it's going to be E flat. Okay, so this is the key of B flat major. It includes 2 flats. I'm going to go ahead and go back to my other page here and remind you that F, let me do this again, F, C, G, D, A, E, B needs to be reversed for the order of flats. We're going to go B, E, A, D, G, C, F. This is easier to remember because it spells the word bead, and then you just have to remember the letters G, C, F. Okay, that's not too hard. So what the key signature is going to look like is for F major, your key signature is going to have a single B flat in it. And for B flat major, your key signature is going to have a B flat and an E flat, and so on. This is how it's going to end up working out. Our G flat, our C flat, and our F flat. And of course, once again, we have 7, but you're not going to end up using that 7th one a lot of the time. So that's what our order of flats looks like. So the order of sharps is F, C, G, D, A, E, B. The order of flats is B, E, A, D, G, C, F. You must memorize that as well as your circle, but then you'll know a lot about how music works if you memorize that. Also, something to kind of keep in mind is that all of these letters, there you go, all of these letters are a 5th away from each other too. So that's something to kind of keep in mind. Because they're appearing on the 4th scale degree or the 7th scale degree, depending on which side of the circle you're on, they're appearing always on that note. And so when the scale moves by 5th, that new note's going to move by 5th as well. And so that's why these are all a 5th apart from one another. Okay, so that's key signatures. And that's basically what it looks like to be in one of those keys. It's going to use however many flats or however many sharps in that key signature. They're going to be permanently enabled. And you'll hopefully know that scale because you'll memorize this information. There's all kinds of little tricks and whatnot, but really, you don't need the tricks. You just need to be exposed to the thing you need to memorize a lot, and you'll memorize it. Okay? So let me go back to my circle page. We're going to fill out the rest of the circle real quick. B flat, going down a 5th. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. E flat. That's going to be 3 flats. Another 5th. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. A flat, 4 flats. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. D flat, 5 flats. I'm going to come up here because I'm going to run out of space here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, G flat. Okay, so that's going to let us fill all of the rest of this out. We get E flat, we get A flat, and then we get D flat, and we get G flat. Okay, that's your entire circle. Now, here's what you need to know about how this works practically speaking. All of these keys are a 5th away from one another, okay? Which means that in each one of these keys, the closest keys that are adjacent to whatever key you're on, like in C, your closely related keys are going to be F on the left and G on the right, or G is plus 5th, F is going to be minus a 5th, okay? Those scales share 7 common notes with the scale that you're on. So that means that G shares almost all of its notes with C except for the F sharp. That means F shares almost all of its notes with C except for the B flat, right? So if a composer wants to move you into one of those keys, which they'll do all the time, all they have to do is sneak in an F sharp, or they'll have to sneak in a B flat somehow. There's a way that they typically do it. But once those fundamental components of the key start to get introduced, it's going to end up guiding the music towards a new center as home. So in C major, C feels like home, but if we start introducing F sharps and whatnot, it's going to eventually push us, if we're using normal chords and chord progressions, it's going to eventually push us to G major, and that's going to feel like home. And they can do it really smoothly. It's amazing. It's amazing how this works, and how, I know it looks complicated, but this is really like, this is a masterpiece. This is like figuring out gravity or something. Like, this is a really amazing thing, the circle of fifths and how music works, and in my opinion, it's a very amazing thing, okay? Okay, so we talked about order of flats and the new flat appearing on the 4th scale degree. We talked about going a fifth to the right of C equals the number of sharps that it is. So like B major has 5 sharps, therefore it is 5/5 to the right of C. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's your B. You have 5 sharps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. B major has 5 sharps. It just works out. What else? We filled out the circle, so we got a complete circle here. One other thing to explain is the changeover at the bottom. So notice that 6 sharps is It's G flat major and also F sharp major. It's the same physical place on the keyboard, but there's two ways of thinking about it, and it would look different on the staff. You can express it the 6 sharps way, which would be F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, B, C sharp, D sharp, E sharp, F sharp, or you can express it the G flat way. G flat, A flat, B flat, C flat, D flat, E flat, F, G flat, right? And we refer to those two places, or really it's the same place, but the two different ways to describe that same place. We refer to those as inharmonically equivalent, a vocab word for you, okay? Now I will give you my preference. Unless I'm reading a piece in F sharp major, I like to think of all of the black major keys as flat keys, and so I like to think of G flat major. I like to think of this area as G flat major as opposed to F sharp major. That's just a preference of mine. So basically when I'm going around the circle and I get to that 6 o'clock position, I don't even think of F sharp, I think of it as G flat. And then if you keep moving a fifth to the right, you're gonna end up going back up the other side of the circle, but we're gonna change over, and instead of adding new flats, we only have so many flats to add. Instead, we can use this inharmonically equivalent system and switch the flats, or switch the sharps over to flats, and then we'll start decreasing them, because that's what the effect is of keeping moving to the right a fifth, is you're going to take away a flat or add a sharp. That actually technically in the music system, that means the same thing. When you add a sharp, that's the same effect as taking away a flat. And when you add a flat, that's the same effect as taking away a sharp. And so this is why you can go all the way around the circle and actually have it be a consistent system. The only thing that you need to realize, you got to change what you're calling everything at the 6 o'clock position. And that's when I change over to G flat, at least when I'm dealing with the majors, okay? And so, yeah, that's the, I want to explain one other thing. So like you can do you can do 7 sharps or 7 flats. Like 7 sharps would be like 1/5 to the right of F sharp major, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So instead of going back on the flat side of things, you could also think of this as C sharp major. And C sharp major has 7 sharps. C sharp, D sharp, E sharp, F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, B sharp, C sharp. Literally all the sharps, all the things, difficult to read. No one wants to read or play music in C sharp major, okay? And so instead of doing C sharp major, you can express the same position on the piano using the inharmonic equivalent of D flat major, which is at that 5 position on the flat side, or the 7 position on a clock face. And that is going to be an easier way to experience that same place on the piano. So there's not a lot of pieces that are written for C sharp major. I actually don't know of one off the top of my head, but I know many, many, many pieces that are written for D flat major. It's a lot more comfortable to read in. And so here's C sharp major, right? C sharp, D sharp, E sharp, F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, B sharp, C sharp. Or D flat major, D flat, E flat, F, G flat, A flat, B flat, C, D flat. Much simpler because of not having to have so many sharps, right? And there's the equivalent on the flat side of things too, of 7 flats. We don't need to worry about that. I'm trying to keep it simple here. And so that's just a little explanation as to why we prefer D flat over C sharp, which hopefully that makes sense. So the last thing I want to show you is a full trip around the circle. I'll just play 1 octave scale. I'll show you what a trip around the circle looks like. And I'll try to narrate a little bit as I go. And we'll see if this makes sense to you, because you want to be able to do this. You want to be able to do this, okay? So C major, we're starting at the 12 o'clock position, and we're going to go we're going to make a full trip around the circle clockwise, which means we're going to add sharps. We're going to go to the bottom of the circle, and we're going to start taking away flats. We're going to change it to flats. We're going to start taking away flats, and we'll come back up to C, okay? I'm also not going to move to the right each time because I don't have the keyboard length to do that. So what I'm going to do is I know like when I get to G, I know that D is my next one, so I could keep going up to D, but I'm just going to play it wherever it's comfortable. So if you're looking at the picture of the circle, which you should be looking at that right now, you'll be able to see that. Okay? So here's C major, no sharps. G major, 1 sharp. D major, 2 sharps. A major, 3 sharps. E major, 4 sharps. B major, 5 sharps. Okay, F sharp major / G flat major, 6 sharps or 6 flats. I'm going to call it G flat. that's 6 flats. D flat is 5 flats. A flat is 4 flats. E flat is 3 flats. B flat is 2 flats. F is 1 flat. And then the next fifth to the right from that would be C. So basically, I'll show you what a fifth to the right each time looks like. I'll do open fifths here, and you can see from the bottom. So C, G, D, A, E, B, G flat, D flat, A flat, E flat, F, and then we're back to C, and that's actually the last position that we had. We would run out of positions. So that is my simplified summary of how the circle of fifths works. I hope that was illuminating for you. Feel free to post some comments or questions down below, and I would be happy to field them. And I will also share some more advanced videos about the circle of fifths later on. So anyway, hope that was helpful for you, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.